The next talk is by Ralph Neininger, who will tell us about Patricia's bad distribution.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'd like to thank Cecile and Sebastian for putting together this nice program and workshop. The talk is joint work with Luigi Adorabel and Pat Moy, both Canadians from McGill and Carleton University. Most of the people here certainly know tries and Patricia tries, but I will recall them briefly. We will only need an alphabet with two elements, so 0, 1. And we are considering data structures for data which are given as strings. So they're infinite sequences of bits, 0, 1, and we consider n of them, denoted x1 to xn. And so the trie is constructed as follows. We first imagine the complete binary infinite tree. And now each datum, which is an infinite string, so the left edges are labeled 0, the right edges are marked labeled 1. Each infinite string corresponds to an infinite path in this binary tree. And so we can just mark all of these strings in the tree. And now we store them at the node closest to the root on the path, which is not contained in any other path. So this would be here, and this guy here would go here, and it would look like this. So this is the trie constructed from this sequence of strings, so finite number of strings. And so here's another example. Trie is coming from the word retrieval, because we want to retrieve information from the structure. And the subject of the talk is the height. And the height is the maximal depth, so the maximal distance of any leaf to the root. So here it would be foo, the height. Okay, but we are not really interested in the trie. We are interested in the so-called Patricia tree. And this is constructed from the trie as follows. Whenever you have a node which has only one descendant, you contract this edge. So, and here's another one. So these two nodes, they would be contracted here to one node with one edge. And the labels which you contracted, you just label to this new edge. So here's one node with only one descendant. So you would contract it, and you have this label 1, 0. And here again, you have two of them. So you contract and you get 1, 1, 0. And this more compact structure is called the Patricia tree. And so we will be interested in the height, the index denoting the number of data in the tree, which is identical with the number of leaves. And yeah, Patricia is sort of practical information to retrieve information called an alphanumeric. It was introduced independently by Morrison and by Quenberger in 1968. We will look at these trees in a probabilistic model. And so we will assume that the strings which we store in the Patricia tree are random. And we will always assume that they are independent and identically distributed. So we have to specify distribution mu on this set of infinite strings. And the general assumption that we will make is that this distribution is diffuse, which is another word for being non-atomic. Because if you have an atom for this distribution, there's a positive probability to get strings at least twice. And then this structure would not be defined as a finite tree. So this is a general assumption, non-atomic distribution on this set of strings. Okay, many special cases of these distributions have been considered in the literature, and many people here have contributed, and I've only, to apologize, I've only a small selection of citations. So the probably most studied case is the case of the Bernoulli model. There, this distribution is just the sequence is just generated by independent bits, Bernoulli with the same success probability. And you can check the books of Knuth or Spankowski or Mahmoud, or I've put some biased selection of references, more biased towards probability. Then if you want to have dependence between bits, the maybe most simple model is the Markov model, where you generate the string by a Markov chain. So these bits in the sequence are generated one by one by a Markov mechanism. Another model with dependencies is the density model. there you just generate a random variable in the unit interval with the Lebesgue density, and then you write it as an expansion in bits and take these bits in this expansion as the components of your sequence. And this was studied by Luc Defroy in a paper, which we will come back to later. And another quite general model are the dynamical sources. And this is one of the first papers which is a model which is more general and much more general than the Markov model, and more analytic in its flavor. Okay, so I will only quote two results for the height of Patricia trees, which are relevant for the talk. The first is for the symmetric Bernoulli model. So now all bits are independent at Bernoulli 1/2. And there the height is as good as it can be. So Peter, for example, has this result that the height divided by log base 2n tends to 1 almost surely. And of course, you cannot do better than log base 2 of n. And a different sort of result, which holds for arbitrary diffuse distributions, is by Luc Defroy from 2005. It's a concentration result, which we will need later on. And this is, so here you have a general diffuse distribution and independent strings, but you could even have no identical distribution, which we don't need, but it's a little bit more general than what we need. And then it's one of these results where you may not know much about the expectation, but you know about the left, upper, and lower tail of the distribution, tail bounds. Okay, so these are results who aim to show that this Patricia tree behaves well and is of good use for applications in algorithms. And now the question of the talk was posed to me some years back by Steve Evans and Anton Wackolbinger, who showed once up in my office. Anton Wackolbinger is a colleague from Frankfurt. And they asked, how high can a random Patricia tree grow? And for arbitrary diffuse distribution. So now the game is to make it high, the tree, to construct a distribution so that it becomes as high as possible. This is the question. So from the perspective of algorithms, the question is how bad can the behavior be for the worst case access time to the data? Okay, so we have two answers. These are now the results in the extended abstract. The first theorem says the height is always sublinear. So to be more precise, for any diffuse probability distribution on the set of strings, you have either an expectation or almost surely that the height is little o of n. Okay, so you cannot get a linear height. And there's a complementary result which says, on the other hand, any sublinear height is possible. So to be more precise, if you have any sequence alpha n, which tends to infinity, think of log n, then you can construct a diffuse probability distribution on the set of strings so that the height exceeds n over alpha n, both in expectation and also almost surely. So results in this direction can already be found in a paper by Luc Defroy in '92. This is this paper on the density model, where the theorem 1 is shown for the density model, which is a subset of the diffuse distributions. And theorem 2 there is shown, there are densities constructed, which yield theorem 2 for polynomial alpha n. Okay, so what I will now do, theorem 1 I won't discuss in the talk. This is sort of a technical argument, which is in the proceedings. But theorem 2 now I would like to show how we construct these distributions which cause this bad behavior. And this is what we call bad distributions, if you have this sort of large heights for the structure. Okay, so the first thing, we construct sort of an auxiliary distribution, which we need later on. So this is, so we fix an integer, capital N, and now we do the following. We choose capital T uniformly from 0 to n square minus 1. And then we construct a string as follows. It starts with zeros, until position t. So if t is k, we start with zeros for the indices less than k, and the first one is put at the value of capital T. Yeah. And so this will be the eth component of our string. And now we add independent Bernoullis for the remaining places. And this is unimportant. Subsequently, it's just being done so that it becomes diffuse. Okay. So this distribution mu n is now just a distribution of the string containing these bits. So just zeros until this uniform position between 0 and n square, and then adding up independent Bernoullis. And the observation is, as long as you do not generate too many of strings of this distribution, so if you generate only little n, which is at most capital N, then the height is almost maximal. The height is always at most n minus 1, but here the height exceeds n minus 2. And the reason is quite easy. I should have an additional picture. So if you now generate independent guys from this distribution here, you just have this uniform number of zeros, and then you get a 1. And so if you independently generate a few of them, you would get these ones at usually at different places. And whenever you have such a cherry here, of course, this contributes +1 to the height. And so the only problem you can have if you have collisions, if you get these positions multiple times. But since we have n square positions and only choose at most n many of these strings, the expected number of such collisions is bounded by 1. And so the height is at least n minus 1, sorry, n minus 2. Okay, so just keep this in mind. I can do this construction so that for a limited number of strings, I can always get almost maximal height. Okay, so now this is the building block for this bad distribution. And now given is this sequence alpha n, which tends to infinity, this log, log, log n. And now I even take the logarithm of this, which I denote by beta n. And this capital B is essentially the inverse of this sequence beta n. Yeah, generalized inverse. And now the bad distribution is constructed as follows. It's again in 2 stages. First, we choose a geometric 1/2 distributed random variable. This will be the position for the first one as before. So we start with zeros again, up to the position index where this geometric distributed is realized. So there we put the 1. But now we don't fill it up with independent Bernoullis. Now what we fill up is a realization of this distribution which I've just constructed. And the index which I use is this capital B of K. K is the realization of the geometric. So it essentially looks like this. So now you have at some point, you have K, where you have a geometric. So you have the zeros, then you have a 1. And now you're in this subtree, now you use this distribution, which I just constructed for the suffix. Okay. And the claim is that the distribution of this string satisfies what we want. And this can be seen as follows. So now I'm showing that the height, expected height, is at least alpha over n over alpha n. And we can see this as follows. We just count the number of our first n strings. So we fix little n. We count the number of our first strings which have this first one at position beta n. Yeah. But this position is geometric distributed. So each of the strings satisfies this with probability 1/2 to the beta n. And the strings are independent. So this number is binomial distributed, n strings, and that's the probability to have the first one at this position. Now recall that the beta n was essentially log alpha n. So this is essentially 1 over alpha n. And with the construction that we did, it is actually at least 4 over alpha n. So expectation of this binomial is at most 4n over alpha n. And this means that the probability that we have less than half of the expectation by some sort of Chernoff bound is exponentially small. Yeah. Or the other way around with high probability, we have 2n over alpha n of these n strings start with this prefix. So we have the first one at position beta n. Okay, so you have so many of these guys where the first one is at this position. And now they have all suffixes constructed independently from this distribution mu b beta n, which I constructed on the slide before. And this means, and now we check that we're in the situation of the lemma. I claim these are not so many considered for this parameter. So this is, of course, if alpha n at some will be larger than 2 eventually. So this is bounded by n. But since capital B was essentially the inverse of beta, this is, if you check it, this is at least n. So this is satisfied. This is less than this parameter here. So the lemma applies. And in the subtree, which I have drawn here, now you get essentially what you need. So now here you get this, here you get sufficiently many guys who lead to these cherries, which realize the height that you need. So this finishes essentially the first part of this second theorem, which was the expectation. So now regarding the almost sure behavior, well, if I can do it for n over alpha n, of course, I can also find a bad distribution so that this is larger than n over log alpha n. Okay. And now I use this left tail bound of Luke, which in this situation, if you plug the expectation in, it looks like this. And now you just check that the probability that you are, so this is over n over log alpha n. So if I just consider events where the height is less than alpha over log square alpha n, if you plug it in, it already becomes exponentially small. So now I can apply the Borel-Cantelli lemma because this is summable. So with probability 1, only finitely many of these events occur. And since I have a logarithm here and here it's missing, this has to tend to infinity almost surely. Okay, and I hope it's fine.
One wants to finish really quickly.
Yeah, we're speeding up now. LP norms. Well, in this situation, for the first theorem, I think it's clear because of dominated convergence. You know, this is always less than 1 here. So you've got dominated convergence. And for the second one, yeah, it looks like I would have to check the details, but it seems maybe Swante sees right away, but it looks like it's also an LP. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, sorry. It's not complete the calculation.
Yeah. Oh, it's 6,000, and then 1%. So like, this, how does that, the minus,
Here,
yes,
from here to here?
yes.
Yeah, well, there you have,
10 over log,
yeah, you have to make it appropriate so that it fits. And then you have to use this, which I showed before, this bound of Luke. Here. And then you have to plug it in here, and then you get it.
and also like the bar dilemma, that's like 2,000.
Yeah, I'm in the easy part. I don't need independence. It's the summable part. You know, here, this is essentially geometric. So it's finite, so I don't need independence. No.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just reading it and then you moved it to, thank you.